Lisa Freed.
Hi, everybody. And if Sarah or Monica, if you could start everybody's video, we're not able to start our video. I think that would be better.
All right, and so your camera.
Right, and the host has prevented video, so my
Thank you.
panelists can't start their video.
Okay. Should be working now.
Hold on, I have to.
Yes, now we can see you all. Great. Hello.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. And we have one more panelist joining us. She's on her way, which is kind of strange on Zoom, but we'll just use old terminology. So welcome, everybody. This is super exciting for us because we want to get a chance to talk to you a little bit about all the different kinds of careers that somebody could have in computer science. I think we have a lot of different jobs on the panel today, so you'll get to hear from all of them. Hold on. So I'm going to start, we'll go through introductions just so you get to know who we are. My name is Lisa. I manage our STEM outreach program at iRobot. And so doing a lot of our education work, working with students and teachers to talk to them exactly about what we're doing today, which is what are the careers and what's available to you, as somebody interested in computer science. So we're going to hear a lot of that today. We're going to hear about all different careers. Beside that, myself, I'm a civil engineer, which does not exclude me from using computer science. A lot of the civil engineering work is done by CAD, done by computer software programs and things like that. So let's we'll just kind of go around. Alex, I don't know if you want to start. Tell us who you are and what you do at iRobot.
Can do. Hello, my name is Alex. I currently work at iRobot as a software automation engineer, which basically that means that I write automation software that helps test our new robots. So believe it or not, everything that we make breaks. And my job is to find where it breaks so that we can make it better. And so I've been working on a whole bunch of recently released robots, and I'm also focused on one that is going to be released in the future.
That's awesome. Tatiana, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Tatiana, and I'm Alex's counterpart on the cloud side of software. So I'm a software engineer who tests the software that is connecting the robots to the cloud.
Amazing. Actually, Tatiana is who I need to talk to because I have a robot that can't get on the cloud. So,
I can help you with that.
well, I hope. Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Nick Cuneo. So I am also a software engineer on cloud. I work mainly on smart home stuff. So I'm a lead on everything around Alexa, Google IFT, a lot of automation type stuff. So you can clean your house with your robot when you leave the house. Features like that. I work closely with Tatiana.
Awesome. Go ahead, Devin.
Hey, I'm Devin Lippman. I'm actually I have a similar background being from engineering instead of computer science, but found my way over here. And now I work in the embedded firmware portion of the robot, writing low-level C, C++ to interface with the peripherals on the device, basically the pieces that make the robot move.
Very cool. And then Lynn, how are you? Go ahead.
Yeah, pretty good. So hi, my name is Lynn and I'm from the connectivity team. So my day-to-day job is working on making sure the robot have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connections, and also we're the middleman for navigation and cloud and app communication. So I'll make sure that communication happens and everybody gets the right messages.
Awesome. Christina.
Hi, I'm sorry, my camera is not working right now, so unfortunately you don't get to see me. But I am here, I promise. So I'm a data engineer. As you can imagine, the robots that we have out there produce data, and that has to go somewhere so that our data scientists can use it, and the folks here that are here on this call can use that data to improve our product and figure out what's actually going on in the field. And as you can imagine, there's engineering challenges inherent with managing that data and making it accessible and available for everybody else, as well as building the tools to help people access and understand that data. So that is what I do.
Awesome. So I think we have middle and high schoolers on the call. Is that correct, Sarah? Maybe.
Yes, we do. But if the classes wouldn't mind, if the teachers wouldn't mind sharing with us, you can just type in the chat where you're coming from and what grade level is in your classroom today. We would love to hear who's in your class.
Fantastic. So we're going to go, assuming it's middle and high schoolers. I think one thing that's really important, let's start with, is, well, what did you go to school for? So when you decided to go, in high school even, and what did you, kind of, sometimes you get to focus on things in high school, and then what did you go to college for to really learn? And we can just, go around, shout out. I don't have to call on you. So let us know what that was.
I can go first if you'd like. Is that okay? All right. So when I was in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I don't think many of us do at that age. You just kind of know which classes you like, what subject you're good at, but you're not sure whether you're gonna like it for the rest of your life, or this is gonna be your calling, right? I was good at math, but I didn't enjoy it very much. So I went into music. I actually graduated from music college. I thought I'll teach, and I did it for a while. And then I realized it wasn't for me. I love kids, but I didn't love them every day to be teaching 8 hours a day. And then I went back to school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just exploring. I tried a few things. And I think that the lesson I've learned is that you just figure it out by trying. You can switch, you can just go learn different things and then try to apply them and see what sticks, what is good for you. Eventually, computer science kind of chose me. I mean, I just felt like this was my thing, and I was happy doing it. I was very happy coding, and as much as I love people and I enjoy being social with my coworkers, so my previous education helped me in my current job, but it didn't become my major route. My second education became what I'm essentially doing right now, which was computer science, and then kind of going through looking for jobs. iRobot became a place where I really enjoyed applying my studying. So that's my story. Who wants to go next?
First of all, that's awesome. And I had absolutely no idea. I've known Tatiana for quite a while and no idea that was your background. So that's pretty cool. And we'll talk a little bit later about how you use the things that you went to school for. Alex, do you want to tell us a little bit of what you learned in, what you tried in school first?
Sure. So I guess when I was your age in middle school, I knew that I liked math and I knew that I liked science, but I hadn't heard the word engineer. And I think that was the ticket for me. When I started high school, my high school had a robotics team, a first robotics team. And I was picking my classes and I was like, I want to do that. And so I joined the robotics team. I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to build robots. And I get in there and I start building a little bit. And a month in, they start telling me to program. And I didn't turn back. And so at the end of high school, I've done 4 years of robotics. I know I really like it. I like programming. I like robots. And so I actually grew up in California, in Northern California in Sacramento. And I ended up coming out here to the East Coast to study robotics, engineering, and computer science because WPI didn't make me choose. So I didn't. So I graduated robotics, engineering, and computer science, ended up at iRobot programming at a robotics company. And I've had various positions in here, but we can get to that later.
That's really cool. Anybody else want to talk about what they studied in school?
I could talk.
Yeah.
Oh, I can, I don't know how far we want to go back, 5th grade, kind
Yeah,
of like Tatiana. I thought I was going to be an architect. That's probably the first thing I can remember I wanted to do. And probably around 6th or 7th grade, not to date myself, but before the internet, people typed everything and it was all words. So it was pretty easy for me. I sat down and I got into what they call bulletin boards, where you'd actually call your computer into something and talk to each other. And I saw that and I said, how does that work? And started programming, trying to make my own bulletin board. And that kind of got me hooked. So around high school, that was the first time that you could take a programming class. And I took a couple there, got some college credit for it, which took me into college. And I said, well, I know how this software thing is working, but how does it make things move? And so I ended up going towards electrical engineering instead of programming at that point, which but they're pretty interrelated. I needed to know how to program to make the bits move, and I wanted to know what the bits were doing. So I went with engineering. But coming out of school, I found myself using both. And today I see myself as a computer science person more than or a computer engineer, if you will, more than an electrical engineer.
that's pretty cool. Christina, you were going to add in?
Yeah, I was. So I did end up as a computer science major in undergrad, but my path to it was a little bit different because unlike I think a lot of people here, I did not have programming classes in middle school or high school because my school did not have them. My school did not have FIRST robotics. So I declared computer science as a major going into college because I was like, well, I like math, I like logic. And the computer science seems kind of like it's these things. So let me just try it. But I was actually applying to schools both as a computer science major and as a clarinet major, just to try to have a backup plan as the thing I could do in case I got into computer science and I really hated it because I knew nothing about it. And stuck with computer science as my major throughout undergrad, but picked up a history minor on the way, just for something, again, a little bit different. Worked for a few years, then went back to school got my master's in computer science with a focus in AI and artificial intelligence, but hated training models as it turns out. So went a little bit more in the systems to support those things direction than in the actual things that I went to school for directly, even though I still went to school for computer science. And now here I am as a data engineer, though had a bit of a winding career through that, which I'm sure we'll touch on later.
Anybody else want to talk about what they studied?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about my history. So I was your quintessential nerd in middle school and high school. I just wanted to play video games all day. And so my friends convinced me to take a AP computer science course in high school with them. And so that's where I learned to do programming for the first time. Thought that was pretty interesting. I knew I kind of wanted to do something with computers. Didn't really know what, so figured computer science seemed like a realistic thing to do in college to just kind of decide what to do later with no idea of what that would even lead to. Did a couple like internships doing like video game programming and stuff while I was in college and dabbled in that for a little bit. Was like, one thing that's really interesting about kind of the computer science field is there's so many things you could do with it. So while working at a video game company, it was like I got to work on engine programming, UI design, networking, server side stuff. And that really like allowed me to kind of just see what all the different things you can do and I kind of like focused on like one area, and I went for more like, found that I really was interested in doing server side stuff. And now I'm working on IoT platforms, and I get to work on smart thing integrations and get to code on Alexa and things like that. So it's always good just to try things, because you always have time to switch and try something different.
Right. If I could add on that, Nick, it's interesting how far you can really go with programming. I mean, let's go back 5 years. I was strictly a hardware developer, and I had to run a robot that created a tremendous amount of data. I was finding that C++ was really too slow to keep up in the lab because I was writing too much code just to do the simple things. Somebody opened the door to me with another language called Python, which, similar to what Christina was saying, I liked math, I liked logic. Python allowed me to just start putting those pieces together in what was almost English, and getting those fast results. All of a sudden, over the next course of years, I found myself creating internet applications, mining big data, creating dashboards for people, and it's just incredible the scope that you can find in this kind of field.
Very true. Lynn, did you want to add anything before?
Oh yeah, sure. So before I go to college, actually in my senior year, I want to study physics because I just love everything that moves. Like this movement, the forces just amazes me all the time. So when I actually got into college, I decided to do physics and pre-med because yeah, I also love medicines. So there's one physical project that I need to program something to demonstrate like a small car and how it undergoes with the forces. And then that gave me really hooked into computer engineers. And then by the time I graduate that, I do have a choices to go for medicine or go for computer engineering. But then at that time, I think it was the launch for Da Vinci, and then it absolutely blew my mind. So I just feel like I love computer engineers because they can be so many things. It can be a system, it can have its own mind to learn, it can develop, it can changes, it can adapt into a human life, maybe even more in the future. So yeah, I absolutely love a computer engineer.
That's funny. You can see a theme here. Some of these people didn't even start in computer science, but then went and did it or finally came around to it. Many of them started in some form of a tech job or tech in school, be it engineering, computer science, right? But as they've figured out what they like to do, their job has changed. The other thing that changes a job a lot is what's being invented and developed in the world. Nick is talking about how he programs with Alexa, right? Alexa and Google Home are a lot of his job. So our robots are programmed. So if you say, hey, Alexa, go vacuum, the Roomba comes out and vacuums. Well, 5 years ago, Nick didn't have a job like that because it didn't exist. Right? So your job is going to change based on what exists and what other people do and what things we think we can make all work together. And so that's why it's a really exciting field. You're going to get to change your mind. You're going to get to, pick different things as you go through your jobs. So in your current job today, what kind of skills do you use the most? And when we talk about that, some of those skills are probably things you learned in school, but some are not. And so are there things that you use every day that might surprise you? For me, I'm an engineer. I'm working in education, but I need to have really good presentation skills because my job means that I'm speaking in front of students every day. And so I've had to learn how to be a good speaker, how to notice what the room is feeling, that kind of thing. So I'm curious, are there skills from school or are there skills otherwise that you use a lot of? And anybody can start, go ahead.
I guess, we talk about what we've learned versus what we've learned in school versus what we learn on the job, right? I'd say that design patterns are something that was taught, and it's something that I use every day, certainly to the point where it's almost an instinct, versus things that become more common in creating architectures or designs is going to be the organization skills or the logic skills associated with that. You do learn along the way in school a lot of those tricks, but those get perfected over time as you use them. You need to be able to focus your mind to a point where you're able to say, you know, these abstract objects A and B have a relationship, and how do we describe that?
I would add, kind of building on what Lisa said, communication, but communication to different people. Like, you're not just talking with engineers who know everything that you do, brain transplant style. You're talking to people who are, either engineers in a different field. Like, if I have to talk to Devin or to Nick, we're all engineers, but we work on different things. So, trying to then communicate with things that I know into something that they would understand and vice versa is something that I find I have to do quite a bit. And also talking to folks who maybe aren't technical. Like, if I'm working with trying to provide data to, say, folks in like a marketing organization or something, they might come to me with a very vague, nebulous problem that they want something data to solve, that they want some sort of data to help them solve. And then I have to figure out how to communicate with them to then translate that into something concrete that can be requirements for something that is then built. And being able to bridge all of those different gaps in a communication ways is very important. Also, being able to take a vague problem and break it down into its component parts and then figure out what has to be done. And then so that you can then get to what Devin was talking about with then coming up with what is the design pattern I actually need to use here if I need to do this particular thing. So problem definition and decomposition is also a very important one on just like, great, I've got to do a thing. What do I have to do? And how do I know that I've done the thing that I'm supposed to do? And I see Alex and Tatiana smiling because that's also very important for the testing that they do as well. How do I know that the product is actually working?
Anybody else want to chime in?
Sure. I typically say that my two biggest takeaways from college, other than technical aspects, were one, how to work with people, and two, how to break down problems. And I use these every single day. I'm currently the tech lead of one of the new products that we're doing in our automation. And so that involves having to work with the software team and seeing what they're developing. It has to deal with our automation team to make sure that what we're developing isn't breaking other things. We're working with project management and all of these different things and making sure that we're all on the same page. And then to Christina's point, making sure that the way that we're testing it is actually giving us the results that we care about. If it's giving us a whole bunch of data that isn't useful, that's not helping us make the product any better. So breaking down that problem into actionable ways that we can make things better.
Anyone else?
I can go for a bit. So
Yeah.
I think on some other skills I learned from, especially like a physiology lab, is documenting everything you did and make sure your product is maintainable. So it helps other people to onboard, help you present your stuff. And then, for example, most people, when you come back to see your code you wrote a month ago, you might not remember what this part is for. But then if you have a documentation, it's very easy for you to go back and check what that meant, what that was meant to do. So yeah, have a track record of everything you've done. It's easy to present a result, like what has been working, what's not working, and then, well, just nice to have a record for everything. So it's good to check back and forth.
So what you're hearing, there's a couple things. There's going to be a lot that you learn in school. Every one of these guys took math classes and science classes, but those other classes really help as well. English classes, if you get to do, presentation skills, writing. I do a lot of writing every day. Lynn is, also talking how she has to write down the procedures that she follows. One of the things we do a lot of is teamwork. Some of these guys work together. Alex might work with Tatiana on a project. Lynn might write code that ends up with Nick, that kind of thing. When you're working across teams, it's important, first of all, to know how to do that. Remember, think about the group projects you do in school. learning to communicate, learning to figure out who knows how to do one thing, but is maybe weaker on another thing. But then also documenting it, writing it down, keeping a notebook. If I am out sick for the next day, my coworker needs to know how to pick up the pieces and make sure that the job keeps going. So it's really important that I keep good notes or keep people informed. And that's something you're doing in school now, if you're on group projects or if you have to do your homework, things like that. Just make sure you're using all of your skills. I want to pause because we have a really good question in the chat. This person would really like to be a software engineer or a data engineer like you guys, but is wondering, does it also help to have some business skills? So I'd be curious, how many of you guys also use some of those business type skills?
I could say, probably coming from a mixed background, maybe my experience is different here, but certainly having that business knowledge, understanding why we are developing our product is tremendous. It's pretty common, actually, I think, to see engineers go back to school for things like a major in business. I've thought about it myself at times. Now, along the way, you get exposure to that business, and it's nice to know what they're talking about before you start talking about it. So I'd certainly encourage that, but it's something that you can learn out of necessity as well, I'd say. Yeah.
Anyone else want to take a?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I worked with a startup for about a year after I graduate. So it's a relatively small size. So we have about 12 people for the technical team. So it exposed me a lot to how to talk to investors, how to get funding, how to present your product, how to do like fast prototyping. So like you absolutely need the skills to make the product, and especially for a medical product or for a product that's supposed to never fail. And then but you also need to have the great skills to present your stuff and to actually sell it to the customers that you're targeting for. And then there's also a lot of background, depends on how your sales strategy was, what time you're selling. So having a understanding for business is definitely very important. Maybe at the end of the day, technology is more of a skill, but like how you put to use it is up to you.
Very true. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think depending on what you want to do with it, like if you want to go right into startups right after college, I think that taking business classes will only help you be well-rounded enough to get into that sort of scenario. I'm actually going to take it from a different perspective though. So I was actually a double major in college. My majors were similar enough that I had overlapping classes. However, if they were not, like computer science and business, that meant that I would have had to take extra semesters in order to complete both programs. So, and additionally, I didn't have flexibility to take that CAD class that I wanted or that extra music class. And so when you're thinking about something as big as double or majoring, it's worth considering how much flexibility you want in college and if whether having that second major is worth what you're considering.
Yeah, I would also add that, like, from a strict engineering perspective, like it really what having knowledge of the business would help is just, as others have said here, how your work fits in and how your work can drive overall business value rather than necessarily the quality of your engineering work per se. It might be a little bit more useful to have at least a minor or something in business if you want to go into some sort of a management role and get into like either program management or eventually climb up like the manager, director, senior director into the C-suite role eventually. So I would also think about what direction you want your career to go in the long term. And then as others have said, just think about how you use that skills to figure out if it's worth the time commitment.
Yeah, and I just want to add a little bit too, because obviously you probably won't know, if you want to do computer science and business, like, oh, I want to be a vice president one day, or maybe I want to be a solutions architect, or maybe you drop out of computer science and be a physicist or something. I mean, I see all kinds of different paths like that. So having a little bit of flexibility in your core fundamentals of having business is always going to be useful to you. I mean, even as an engineer, like who's not talking directly to investors every day or anything like that, you still learn a lot of really important communication skills through those kind of programs that are still valuable as an engineer. You're always working with people internally in the company, which are kind of like your investors and your customers. And so knowing how to kind of interact with them is going to be important. I'm seeing more a trend and increase in how engineers have to kind of have some kind of entrepreneurial like mindsets. Like you almost have to sell what you're working on to like to people internally in the company to get them to buy into what you're working on or want to work on. And I think that just having some of those skills is always going to be helpful.
I'll also say though that if you end up not double majoring or minoring it in school, that doesn't mean you can't do it later. So just because you don't do it as part of your initial undergrad education does not mean that you can never pick up those skills or that they're not skills that you can learn on the job. And especially nowadays, there's also certificates or like things on Coursera or online courses that are not necessarily the same as a degree per se, but can at least get you some of those same skills and some of the same knowledge if the reason why you'd be considering something like that is to get a knowledge of a slightly different thing.
If I may add one more angle, even though being very well-rounded is very important and will help you, as Christina just said, you don't have to do it all at once. Many companies will have tuition assistants, which means once you get a job and then you suddenly realize you're missing a part, you want to take some business classes or management classes, very often your company will actually pay for the classes while you're working if you want to better yourself, if this is something that could promote you or basically help you in your career. The company you're working for will pay for those classes and you can do it along the way. We actually have a couple of people on our team who are doing this right now, and I've seen this a lot. And you can get a degree that will be, on top of the degree you already have.
Yeah, I actually just finished my master's program, and I started it after I started at iRobot, and so iRobot paid for the tuition on all of it.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Really, really good points. So as you're working, you're going to see, and even as you're going through college or school, you're going to say, oh, I might like this thing too. When you're working, you're going to have an even better, idea of, I think I really like this thing. And business may be that thing. And yes, it really does make sense to see if a company will pay for it. If you're 1,000% sure, then of course go and get the extra degree. None of those skills will ever go to waste. Some of those skills you're going to learn on the job, which is what a lot of these guys were saying. All of our jobs are very specific in that we are, writing the software or making the cloud connection. But in the back of everybody's head has to be the business part of the whole thing. What does this do for iRobot and selling robots? And there are times when you don't think it matters at all. There's times when you realize, let's take Tatiana's job. She makes sure that our robots can talk to the cloud and can get on an app, right? All of our robots run with an app. Well, there were some issues this week where the robots were not able to get on apps. It wasn't our fault. However, Tatiana, I'm sure, was looked to at first to solve it till we figured out it wasn't our fault, right? And that was a really bad day, but it's business decisions that are saying, oh my goodness, if we can't get the robots to talk to the app, we're all in big trouble. Let's figure it out. There's a lot of other people with jobs that aren't specifically software engineers, but they're using that kind of experience too. Let's talk about that app just as much. We have designers and user experience people who have to know what the app needs to look like, right? Think about when you open an app, you want to know how to use it right away. But then they need to communicate that and how they want it coded and how they want it developed and what they want the buttons to do. All of that are part of business decisions, but also part of that software background. Which brings up a really good point. Each of you works on a team, right? Sometimes, very specific, Alex is building and testing material to make the robots stronger, make sure they do their jobs, right? How much do you work though with other teams in the company? Do you work with marketing? Do you work with finance? Do you get to work with other software? Who else do you work with in the company? Anybody want to talk about that? Alex, I know you have everybody under your back.
I know. I interact with a lot of different software teams. So we have our automation team itself. We have a team that writes code that tests in a simulated environment. So I work with the simulator team. I worked with the product team that's involved with the product I'm working on and the software developers who are developing the features. But those are the big ones.
Anybody else work with different teams?
I'd say today, I'm working predominantly with groups like product management, which helps us create a voice of our customer. Who are we actually trying to sell this to? I work in a group that makes the next generation investigations. So we'll create a concept, we'll show that to people and say, is this something you would buy? If they say, well, I like this piece of it, you may end up throwing away what you were originally even starting on and just focusing on something that happened by accident on the side. So that brings in product management. You've got program management, making sure that your schedules make sense. You're working with finance to make sure that the money you're putting into this as an investment makes sense to come back, that, over 5 years, you're going to make some money off of this that'll allow you to go on to your next big thing. There's a lot of that cross team work. There's working with hardware teams because we're a software team. There's working with mechanical teams, making sure that we're moving the right amount and not too fast. What kind of constraints are there around that so that we don't actually break the platform from them? There's a lot of that. And, there's also opportunities to not necessarily need that level of involvement. You can do a very heads down job if that's what you're looking for. You can write your code and you can give that to the next person. You're still going to have to communicate with them, make sure that they know what you're doing. But yeah, the opportunity is what you make.
Anybody else?
I would say the teamwork is very important, especially for the connectivity team, because we're basically like a dispatcher for all platforms. So it's very important for us to have a clear communication, documenting the meetings, and then make sure what are the requirements, what need to be delivered by what time. So it's actually it's a communication skill that you need to keep everybody on the same page. And then also technology is always developing, so we need to keep an eye on new features that could reduce our operational costs. So in that case, we will need to have to present our cheaper strategy to the finance or whoever owns the product to show them, oh, this in this way we can reduce our costs, and then which make our product a little bit cheaper, which is more friendly to the customer. So yeah, presentation and communication is very important.
My team as well, since we own the data lake, we work with anybody who produces or wants to use data, which is, as you can imagine, many people. So, we'd work with, yes, Nick's waving, Nick and his team, since they own, they're the IoT systems, then the data that they have gets dumped into our data lake. We make that available to people like Alex and Tatiana who are trying to figure out how the product is actually working. We also work with anybody who wants to like personalize the app experience or figure out how we can personalize things. So marketing and messaging and all of those sorts of things. So several different teams across multiple domains.
I'll add one more team to this giant list of interconnected communication, but I work closely with our user experience team when we're adding like new smart home features. We want to see like, what that's going to look like to the app. That might involve user research on their end to go find real customers and say, hey, if we're going to add this feature, what would you expect that to do or look like? Or what button do you think would, what if I showed you this button, what do you think that does? And all of that is like really important and comes back to the engineering team, which is constantly being fed back to the UX team of, you know, hey, we want to do this, what's technically possible. So, and it's just kind of a giant back and forth of making sure that the user experience team can understand from the technical people, like what can be possible, and then translating that into something that the user can see and interact with and making sure that it makes sense to them.
That's a really good point, Nick. So let's kind of go through an example. Everything that we do in robotics is interconnected because a robot is what we call a system, and nobody can really design all by themselves. So for instance, you know, Nick talked a little bit about buttons. Many years ago, we developed a new kind of button on the robot. So a mechanical engineer decided how to build the button and what plastic to use. And then it was going to be the electrical engineer's job to make the button work, you know, give it power. Then we have people who say, okay, but let's make sure in the user experience that you know what to do when you see the button and how you actually push the button. So we actually walked around the office with a set of buttons and let people push them to make sure they worked. Then you've got people like Alex who walk into the picture and say, okay, but I'm going to smash this button 1,000 times and see if I can break it, because that's what you do, right? You push buttons a lot in the life of a robot. So everybody has to work together. You might even have our lawyers come in and say, you know what, we can't make the button look like that. Or marketing steps in and says, people will only buy this robot if the button is red. Everybody has to talk to each other. And in the end, what's super cool is that there's a robot and it's on the shelf, and these guys get to go into a store and say, hey, you know what? I helped make that robot. So a lot of different pieces come together. The data is all new. Data science is a very new computer science field where we're saying, okay, what's actually happening? What kind of things should we learn about? There's probably some of you on the call who are thinking, well, this isn't what I want to do, but I still like coding and I like software. Think about all the programs that you use from day to day. If you make an Excel spreadsheet, in a way, that's coding and using software. Plenty of jobs are doing that. Photoshop, Adobe, all of those are software, and somebody actually made the programs, but somebody also has to figure out how to really make them work. So opportunities are everywhere for you. I can see that Nick's answering. We did have a question about internships. And I think that's something really good to talk on whether you guys had internships. That's something you do while you're in school, but you get to work at a company. And that's another really good way to learn, do I like this or do I not like it? Do any of you guys, did you have internships while you were in school? Any of you?
Yeah, so I actually went through a school that was centered around that experience. It was part of the main curriculum. So you would rotate in and out of class and workspace. And I would say probably the biggest thing that I gained from that driving force there is the biggest thing that school is going to offer you is that ability to network with those companies. They're going to give you that step in to begin those conversations around, hey, I'd like to be an intern there. What is it going to take to be in here? What should I be doing for myself in terms of personal development to best support you? And the school is going to do that for you. Also, you know, it's just as you come down the street, you're going to come face to face with people who might work for these companies that might have those kinds of opportunities like internships. Just talking to them developing a casual mentorship relationship with them might be something that suits you well, and may turn into one of these, may not. But it's often helpful just to say, hey, I'm thinking about being an intern for software engineering. I know that you work for XYZ and they do software engineering. What's some advice do you have for somebody in my position, or what have you experienced over the years that's worked for you? I'll just kind of open it very broad like that.
Awesome. Anybody else want to talk about internships?
Sure. So first of all, internship is a great way to try it on, right? If you're not sure, or if you just want to see if this is for you, or this is what you're gonna like, go and try it. Now, as Devin mentioned, that there are multiple schools that will give you that opportunity, but there are some that don't really put it into their curriculum, and you have to go and get it yourself. Go to the job fairs, go to research what companies are hiring interns. Right now, it's actually easier to find remote jobs because before you had to be co-located and you had to look only at the companies that were in your area. Right now, it's changing. Everything is changing, and iRobot has been getting interns who are working remotely in any location. They don't even have to move. So research, find those internships and try, just apply to them, prepare your resumes, get good grades and show this is the classes I've taken. If you are qualified, they will give you an opportunity to try it over summer. And you'll be able to say, I tried this, I like it, but maybe not. Maybe next year you'll come back, or maybe you'll try something else. Also, the field is so wide that just trying one internship in computer science is not going to answer your question, because every job is so different, and there's so many different types of programming that you try it at one company and you try it in a different one, and then you'll decide which one you're actually going to work for.
And when you're putting that resume together to apply for internships, don't just list like what classes you've taken. Call out some important projects that you've done as well, because it'll be about like, what are some of the things that you've done? What have you shown that you can learn, and what can you do? And also feel free to put things on there that are not necessarily exactly classwork, but people might still pick up on. So when I was in undergrad, I was in my college marching band. My sophomore and junior years, I was a section leader, and my senior year, I was a drum major. That went on my resume because that's team leadership experience. So you might not actually think that that would be something that a tech company might pick up on, but it is. So even things that show skills and show the kinds of things that you can do that maybe are not directly in the tech sphere can still be things that someone who's reviewing a resume will look at and say, huh, that's different. Tell me about that. So really, like projects or anything that you've done that can call out what it is that you bring to the table are important things to show.
Right.
And I want
Absolutely
to
right.
add
Anything
that
you can list around what have you done that showed an opportunity to be a leader? What have you done that describes to me how you approach problems is always going to help there.
I want to add that while internships are fantastic opportunities, they are not required for jobs post-college. I did not have any internships during college. I taught nerd camps and spent my time in the woods. And I still got a job and I'm still successful. So I think if you want to, you should go for it. And if it is not your route, then it's not your route.
And all of this advice applies to any of the jobs that you guys are trying to get when you're in high school, when you're in college. You want to tell people who you are and what makes you cooler than the other person who's applying for the job, right? And now those are your projects, those are your hobbies, those are, the teams and clubs. If you think about it, let's say you were applying for a job at iRobot as an engineer. Everybody else applying for that job took the same classes. It's like all your classmates in high school. Most of you have the exact same classes. What makes you special is being in marching band, being in, a cheerleader, all those other things makes you a little bit different. And that's kind of what we want to hear, because a job, any job, is trying to decide if they want to work with you every day. Right. And so that's what's, what makes it exciting. Alex had a really cool project when she was in school, and that caught the eye of the person hiring, and she has a job because of it. So kind of, tell us who you are. And I think that'll work for you at any job that you're applying for. We only have a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we get any questions. We've had some really good ones in the chat. Please let me know if anybody else has questions. We had a question whether we were all remote. Right now, all of us are. Most of us go into the office maybe once or twice, depending on the jobs. Some people are more hands-on. Alex occasionally has to be in to see how the things that she's designed are being built. But you're looking at software, and a lot of these guys are just doing it from home. We've been home for 2 years almost, and it's kind of crazy. I will tell you that
plus for software too. I mean, me coming from hardware, if I was more than 100 miles from my office, that wasn't going to go. But now I live in Oregon and report to an office in Massachusetts. So I couldn't have done that in hardware.
No. And it's different. I mean, a lot of the innovation that we do came from just being in the office and seeing each other, right? That I gave you the example of walking around with buttons. That can't happen now. So it's been a lot harder. And like you guys in school, we're tired of Zoom. We're tired of virtual everything, but it's what we have right now. And when we do get to see each other, it's pretty exciting. So,
that's right.
Any other questions? Don't be shy. Stop being oversaturated. What can you do to separate yourself? How can you make yourself different in computer science? It's those projects. It's what did you do with it? Right? It's if you're interested in computer science and, Nick talked about video gaming and stuff. Tell us if you coded a video game. Show us an example. I'm trying to think. Alex, I don't remember your project. I remember Maria had one that was like a Bluetooth connected toothpaste dispenser, something crazy.
Yeah, in college, my senior project was we made a robot dog. It was like shoebox sized. And so when talking to companies, I was able to talk about what part of the robot I built, what part I programmed, and what I learned from it. But yeah, I think as far as like, yes, computer science is like so vast, but that also gives so many opportunities. So like you can learn if you like making websites or mobile apps, or like researching algorithms. Like there are all of these different ways that you can figure out what you like. I'm sure there's something if you're like looking at this field, just try it out, try little things.
Yeah, and for me, like this job, I think most of the reason why I got it was because what I was interested in working on Alexa skills, and I just took it on as a hobby and messing around with like automating my house and getting the TV to turn on Netflix with my voice, and just messing around with different things that you could do with Alexa skills, setting thermostats and setting temperatures. And when I interviewed at iRobot, that was a lot of what I talked about during that interview of just kind of my hobby projects. And so like Alex said, find something you're interested in and just fiddle with it. And you never know when that information is going to be valuable to you. You can talk to somebody about it in a future interview.
That's right. Also, in the comment on the computer science becoming saturated, I wouldn't try and get too discouraged by something like that. Even what we're talking about here, what Nick was just mentioning, 5 years ago, people weren't talking to their thermostats with code. 10 years ago, people weren't talking to their vacuums with code. It's a growing space. New applications are coming up every day for computer science, and much faster than new computer scientists are being formulated.
I would even go so far as to say that one of the most critical skills that you can show at any point in time in your career is the ability to learn new things. Because no matter what level you are, no matter how long you've been in the field, no matter how much experience you have, anytime you start a job, anywhere from, you know, your very first internship to being a senior or principal engineer or an architect or whatever, you are not going to walk through the door on day one knowing everything that you need to know in order to be successful at that job. There is always going to be some amount of learning that you will have to do, even if it's just, I know all the technical skills, but what is the internal jargon that this company uses to refer to different things? And who are the people? So really I think anything you can do to also show I can learn, and here are some things that I've learned and some cool things that let me do is also an important thing.
Really good advice. Well, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for attending. This is super exciting for us. We always love the opportunity to talk to students. Sarah, did you have anything to close with?
I just want to say thank you too, and thank you for being such a great facilitator. Hearing all of your experiences and practical advice has been really eye-opening and helpful, and I'm sure that many of the students out there feel the same way. And with that, I have shared a survey link in the chat, just so that you can let us know how today went, how you felt today went, any feedback and your thoughts. And you're welcome to also type in the chat any notes to the presenters today, thanking them for taking the time to share their experiences. So thank you again to the whole panel.
No problem. And everybody can always get in touch with us if you email STEM, STEM, at iRobot.com, and we're happy to chat with teachers or students or whatever helps. So STEM, and you guys have our contact, but STEM at iRobot.com. All right. Thanks so much. We'll see you later. Bye.